Spirituality is an indicator of the differences between public and private aspects in modern spaces. Naoki Kashio, Keio University, Japan. 1. Purpose and terminology of this presentation. The aim of this presentation is to think about how public-private aspects are organized in modern spaces by using spirituality as an indicator of its differences. Spirituality is defined here as non-duality of the body, energy and consciousness of human existence. In other words, the core of universal religiosity, which connotes a quality of life, the communality of life in which humans are at one with each other, with the world, and with the universe. 2. Religiosity and spirituality. There are three main relationships between religiosity and spirituality that have been pointed out in recent years. I will explain them, paying attention to each definition. 1. The first is spiritual but not religious, SBNR. Spiritual as a psychological technique to transform consciousness into a non-dual is therefore different from religious. In this case, religiosity is narrowly defined as a particular belief system that is mythic literal. 2. Spirituality is seen as the core, highest level of religiosity. In this case, religiosity encompasses spirituality. 3. Religiosity is considered to be a part of spirituality. In this case, spirituality is defined as a broad concept related to the transcendental dimension that spans religious groups, spiritual movements equals cultures, such as New Age, and other spiritual cultures. Religiosity is understood narrowly as a religious group. The emic subjects of each terminology are, first, those who do not belong to a religious group and are critical of it. Second, those who belong to a religious group and value spirituality. And third, practitioners who are relatively tolerant of the religious groups and have an overview of spiritual culture. An ethic researcher can approach any terminology and can study all types of phenomena. Next, I would like to point out 3 points about the relationship between religiosity and religion. 1. The first is the position that religiosity is a property of religion. The two are synonymous. 2. The second limits religion to religious group and makes religiosity a term for some kind of transcendence in non-religious and everyday life situations. It is structurally identical to SBNR and uses religiosity instead of spirituality. 3. The terms used by the persons concerned, such as religious and spiritual, is taken as emic, and the term religiosity is used as a generic term for them. On the basis of what I have summarized above, I think it is desirable for researchers to use religiosity in this third sense, which emphasizes the consciousness of the people involved. In the above, we have identified a perspective for understanding religiosity in relation to spirituality. In order to clarify how to use the concept of religiosity, let us consider the concept of religion. Again, I will refer to the first position on the relationship between religiosity and spirituality as the narrow understanding of religion, which includes the understanding of religion as a particular belief system that is mythic literal, and the theory of religious evolution, or the stages of religious development. Because Wilber's argument is important as we cannot move forward without it in contemporary studies of religion, religiosity, and spirituality. According to Wilber's integral theory of the stages of development of religion, religion is a vehicle that includes and transcends the previous stages in the process of archaic, magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, integral, and superintegral. This theory is significant in that it does not limit the discussion of religiosity by narrowly considering religion as a specific, mythic literal belief system, as SBNR does. However, it is problematic to apply this theory of religious evolution to the study of religiosity in Asia and Africa. This is because religiosity in Asia and Africa is often embedded in everyday life, and various religious stages often exist simultaneously, or are superimposed. Conversely, the above 2 points about religiosity in Asia and Africa can be clarified by comparing them with Wilber's theory. 3. Phases of spirituality. The private-public aspect as a reference axis. Based on the quality of state of consciousness, spirituality is broadly classified into 2 types: personal conscious spirituality and socio-ethical spirituality. According to this classification, the public aspect of spirituality corresponds to the latter, socio-ethical spirituality, while the private aspect corresponds to the former, personal conscious spirituality. That is to say, the private aspect of spirituality is observed as an existential or transcendental state of consciousness, for example in bodily practices like meditations and that way, as the way of arts and martial arts of Asian traditions, while the public aspect is observed as an altruism in culture, as a world of meaning, in social behaviors without asking for anything in return like donation, blood donation or volunteering. There is a unidimensional correlation between the former and the latter, as the existential and transcendental state of a personal private consciousness deepens. That consciousness becomes phenomenalized into altruistic social behavior in the public world. There are 3 or 4 stages in the basic process of meditation or way practice. The basic process of meditation or the practice of the way has 3 or 4 stages, which I will explain here from the standpoint of consciousness, using Zen as an example. 1. The first thing that happens to the practitioners of Zen and other forms of meditation is the basic state of being aware of the movements of one's own mind. 2. The next step is to simplify one's consciousness, to keep one's awareness of slipping out of oneself inside by simply looking vaguely downward. According to Hiroshi Motoyama, this is called simple coincidence. 3. In the third stage, a higher self is born, which sees itself as looking, which is called ecstasy because it is a state of standing outside oneself. 4. In the last stage, the self and the world become non-dual, which is called perfect coincidence. Personal conscious spirituality thus results in a communality between the self and the world that emerges through unique bodily practices. In other words, it brings the private aspect of the individual out into the public aspect. 1. Personal conscious spirituality practices such as meditation do not end with the private aspect, but necessarily involve the communal, public aspect of its practical phenomenalization socialization. 2. This non-dual communality is then sensed and recognized as the desire for self-denial equals altruism in concrete social situations. 3. Then, the practitioners performs general altruistic acts, such as giving up his or her seat or way to the weak, volunteering or donation. 4. In addition, the practitioners may engage in the ultimate altruistic practice of self-sacrifice, represented by sacrificing one's own life to protect others. In this way, the expression of spirituality can be seen as a Kleinian vase-like process in which one's personal consciousness is transformed into social ethics through specific bodily practices. That is, the private aspect is opened up to the public aspect. 4. Conclusion. Spirituality and the private-public aspect in modern spaces. The following 3 points can be derived from the above discussion. 1. The concept of spirituality can be an indicator to describe a certain relationship between the two aspects of private and public. 2. A particular point to be noted in this relationship is that practices that foster spirituality, such as meditation, provide the opportunity for a leap from the private to the public. 3. From this point of view, on the contrary, the focus on the private-public dichotomy can lead to a deeper understanding of religiosity as spirituality. However, what we must hasten to consider here is the following. That is to say, I think that this understanding of spirituality is universal, but if so, what are the characteristics of the relationship between spirituality and the private-public aspect in modern or modern postmodern spaces? Finally, I would like to make some suggestions in this regard. 1. At the center of the transformation of spirituality in the modern spaces, which includes the postmodern spaces, is probably the transformation of the form of that worldview, that is, a clear image of the self-evident of that world as one. This transformation is largely due to the establishment of the web space as a consequence of the globalization process since the age of discovery. 2. This holism and oneness of that world forms the public space in the modern world. By being superimposed on the web spaces, the public space encompasses the private space, while at the same time eroding it. In other words, the private space is topologically inverted by the web space, and at the same time, it is also a public space. 3. Spirituality cannot escape the situation. Is the movement of spirituality practiced from the private to the public in a complementary simultaneous relationship with the movement of the modern spaces of inclusion of the private by the public? Or is it in an oppositional relationship? This point is one of the central issues for the future. References: Modoi Alma, H. 2006, Varieties of Mystical Experience A. Path to Self-Realization, Tokyo, Human Science Press, Kashio, N. and Becker, C. ed. 2021. Spirituality as a Way, The Wisdom of Japan, Kyoto University Press. Parsons, William, ed. 2018, Being Spiritual but Not Religious, Past, Present, Future, S. New York, Routledge. Wilbur, Ken, 2006, Integral Spirituality, A Startling New Role for Religion in the Modern and Postmodern World. Boulder, Shambhala Publications. Wilbur, Ken, 2016, Integral Meditation, Mindfulness as a Path to Grow Up, Wake Up, and Show Up in Your Life. Boulder, Shambhala Publications.